A former crack cocaine multi-millionaire drug dealer known as Freeway Ricky Ross is suing a successful rap artist who, he says, stole his name and image to make millions of his own.
Chris Blatcher caught up with the real Ricky Ross.
One of the biggest frauds in hip-hop history ain't just about fake chains and ghostwriters. It's about a whole damn identity that got jacked. What? Today, we're breaking down how Rick Ross literally stole another man's entire life story and built a multi-million-dollar empire on it. This story goes way deeper than most people realize, and when you hear the full breakdown, you'll understand why the real Rick Ross is still pressed about it to this day. Let's start with the facts. There are two Rick Rosses in this story. The first one is Ricky Donnell Ross, known on the streets as Freeway Rick Ross. This dude was a legendary drug kingpin who dominated the crack game in Los Angeles during the 1980s. We're talking about a real street legend who moved millions of dollars worth of cocaine and built an empire that stretched across the country. Freeway Rick was so notorious that he even inspired a movie called Kill the Messenger in 2014, and his story became part of American crime folklore. Then there's William Leonard Roberts II, born in Mississippi and raised in Carroll City, Florida. This dude would later become the rapper we know today as Rick Ross. But his backstory isn't what he wants you to think it is. While Freeway Rick was running the streets and dodging the feds, William Roberts was working as a correctional officer in Florida, watching over the same type of dudes he would later rap about being. The rapper Rick Ross basically took Freeway's name, his reputation, and his whole aura, including his hairstyle and beard, and turned it into a rap persona. It's like if somebody took Al Capone's name and started rapping about being a Chicago gangster. Except this actually happened. Before we get into the name theft, let's talk about the biggest fraud of all. Rick Ross was just a correctional officer, and he spent years trying to cover it up. In July 2008, The Smoking Gun produced details linking Ross's social security number to an 18-month stint as a correctional officer at the South Florida Reception Center, along with a photograph first publicized by Media Takeout purporting to be Ross in his correctional officer uniform. When the photos first dropped, Ross straight up lied about it.
Really, nigga?
Ross said the picture was a fake, adding in an interview with allhiphop.com, "My life is 100% real. These online hackers putting a picture of my face when I was a teenager in high school on other people's body. He even dared people to find concrete evidence that he was ever a CO. Well, the Smoking Gun found that evidence real quick." The paperwork didn't lie. Rick Ross was employed by the Department of Corrections in Florida for a year and a half. One document, purportedly signed by Ross, real name William Roberts, is dated December 29th, 1995, while another is of him handing in his notice on June 2nd, 1997. There is also an alleged certificate of appreciation dated September 7, 1996, commemorating his service as, quote, "a perfect attendance employee." But even after all this evidence came out, Ross kept changing his story. In 2022, he told Full Send Podcast he only worked as a correctional officer for 4 months, saying, "I may have lasted 4 months and they said I was a little tardy."
By the way, too, you worked, I don't know if you want to talk about it all, because this is your room.
I can't wait.
So were you a correctional officer at one point?
I was, yeah.
So going all the way back, when was that? How long ago?
Maybe when I was 20.
20 years old?
Yeah.
What kind of people were in there?
You know, I didn't really get to make it to the prison because you got to go through training and all that, and I didn't last long.
Right.
I may have lasted 4 months.
Right.
Before they said, I was a little tardy.
But his own paperwork shows he worked there for 18 months with perfect attendance. The man can't even keep his lies straight. Think about this for a second. Here's a dude who built his whole career rapping about being a drug dealer and street king, but he was actually locking up the real dealers. That's like finding out your favorite mob movie was directed by an FBI agent. The hypocrisy is wild. Now here's where it gets really grimy. Rick Ross got his stage name from an LA drug dealer named Freeway Rick Ross. But it wasn't just inspiration. This was straight up identity theft. What? Freeway Rick Ross was a real person who lived that life, did the time, and earned that reputation the hard way. Freeway made his name in the 1980s as a notorious drug trafficker, building a reputation that remains part of his legacy. Meanwhile, Rick Ross, born William Roberts II, has consistently maintained that his name was inspired not just by Freeway, but by Miami's drug culture of that era. But that's just damage control. The truth is, Roberts saw an opportunity to capitalize on another man's street credibility and took it. The disrespect runs deep. Freeway Rick lamented that the rapper never sought permission to use the name or acknowledged its origins. Imagine building a legendary reputation through blood, sweat, and real street politics, then watching some correctional officer turn your name into a costume and get rich off it. That's exactly what happened here.
And then the other guy, he goes around and tell people he never heard of me.
Right.
You know, that he was playing football and somebody tackled him. I know he was an offensive guard.
Right.
Something happened on the football field and somebody accidentally was trying to call him Big Boss and called him Rick Ross. So when you hear those type of stories, it just kind of make you feel like, you know, what's with this guy? You know, why can't this guy just come out and say,
be honest.
you know, what I am and what I do? And then the way he raps too, you know, he raps about selling drugs.
Right.
And he never sold drugs. You know, he was a correctional officer, had a credit card in high school.
Wow, it's ironic.
You know, comes from one of those great backgrounds, went to college and played like he couldn't read and write. You know, I'm like, why do you make mockery of stuff that normal people go through? You know, it's almost like making mockery.
Freeway Rick wasn't going to let this slide without a fight. In June 2010, Freeway Ricky Ross sued Ross for using his name, filing a copyright infringement lawsuit in a California federal court seeking $10 million in damages. The real Rick Ross had every right to be pressed. This dude literally stole his identity. But here's where the system failed him. Freeway Ricky Ross could not legally trademark his name because he became popular due to, quote, illegal activity. As a result, Freeway Ricky was required to cover the rapper's legal fees, totaling approximately $1 million. So not only did he lose the case, but now he owes the dude who stole his name $1 million. That's some backwards justice right there. The court basically said that because Freeway Rick made his name through drug dealing, he couldn't own it legally. Meanwhile, the fake Rick Ross got to keep profiting off that same illegal legacy. The judge ruled that Roberts created a celebrity identity using the name Rick Ross of a cocaine kingpin turned rapper. He was not simply an imposter seeking to profit solely off the name and reputation of Rick Ross. Rather, he made music out of fictional tales of dealing drugs and other exploits, some of which related to plaintiff. So here's what that simply means. It's okay to steal someone's identity as long as you call it art. The correctional officer scandal really blew up during Rick Ross's beef with 50 Cent. When Ross dropped Mafia music in 2009 and took shots at 50, Curtis Jackson clapped back hard. 50 Cent responded to Ross with, "Officer Ricky, go ahead, try me." Back in 2008, details and a photo surfaced of Ross's 18-month stint as a correctional officer, which is why 50 titled the song Officer Ricky. 50 Cent didn't just stop at music. He also leaked an alleged sex tape involving Ross's baby mama, Lastonia Leviston. And after that, he brought in the mother of Ross's child to expose him on camera. 50 Cent releases an interview with Tia, the mother of Rick Ross's son. The first half of the video is an interview with Tia, who brings further light to Ross's fraudulent lifestyle, speaks about his correctional officer past, and pretty much attacks his character.
Hello, hi, I'm Tia, the mother of Rick Ross's son. Here I am, here's my story. I mean, it's sort of embarrassing to me, you know, because as you listen to his raps, you would definitely believe him, but I mean, it was surprising that he would sit there and say he spends $200 a month on food, $300 a month on clothes, his jewelry is rented.
I go where these other niggas can't go. $2 million worth of jewels on.
You know, possibly not real. His cars are being leased. He don't know where the money came from to put a down payment on a $1 million home. And you know, it's just sad, you know, and I just want to prove the facts today here on This Is 50. It's all real, coming from Tia.
Yeah. The Officer Ricky nickname stuck because it highlighted the core fraud. Here's a dude rapping about drug dealing and street life while he was literally a prison guard. 50 Cent said Ross is Albert from CB4. Even after all these years, Rick Ross is still lying about his past. Rick Ross has been accused of lying about the nature of his past work as a correctional officer after previously stating he only worked in a prison for 4 months. The paperwork shows 18 months with perfect attendance, but he keeps trying to minimize it. Meanwhile, Freeway Rick Ross is still fighting for his name and legacy. As recently as 2024, he was on Joe Rogan's podcast talking about the theft. When he got some money, everyone forgot he was a correctional officer, Freeway Rick said. He criticized gangsters working with a former law enforcement officer and shared letters from inmates alleging corruption by Rick Ross. And just this year, Freeway Rick reignited the feud. "I'm the real Ross," he declared. "Rosé sounds feminine to me." Addressing the clear-cut difference between their weight, Freeway added, "And I ain't fat either. Nah, I ain't fat." This isn't just about one rapper's fake persona, it's about the culture of fraud that hip-hop sometimes celebrates. Rick Ross built an empire worth millions by stealing another man's identity and lying about his past. He made millions rapping about a lifestyle that real people are in prison for while he was one of the people who put them there. Even worse, the legal system said that the real Rick Ross couldn't own his own name because of how he made it famous, but the fake one could profit off that same reputation forever. That's not justice, that's legalized identity theft. At the end of the day, William Roberts didn't just steal a name, he stole a whole legacy. The saddest part, I owe them $1 million, Freeway Rick revealed about the legal fees from trying to protect his own name. So the man who actually lived the life now owes money to the man who's getting rich pretending to have lived it. Rick Ross might have won in court and in the music industry, but history will remember the truth. He's not the boss, he's just a correctional officer who got really good at playing dress up with another man's life.